This was a example. I think it was a problem in the BlueJ textbook, and this was in chapter 33 regarding pass by value and pass by reference. And so there's a little bit of confusion with those terms. Uh, so I wanted to make a clarification. In Java, everything is passed by value. Everything. Um, but then it gets a little bit more complicated than that. So I guess to start off, I want to define what is pass by value, what is pass by reference. Pass by value means that, for instance, here we're making all these different variables and objects, and then we're calling my method and passing it those variables and objects. And then in my method, we're modifying the values of those variables and objects, coming back to the main and printing out the values of those variables and objects to see how these are being passed, right? What are the characteristics of them being passed? And so let me run that, and you can see this is what is printed out. So if we take a look here, Floozy was originally set to 97.4. We run it through my method, which takes it in, and it changes the value of Floozy to 13.1. We end our method, we come back up and print out Floozy. What's printed out? 97.4. So for those of you who have experience, with the other coding classes, this is obvious. Why? Because we've learned that variables only exist in the function that they were created in, which brings to need the the fact that we need to pass arguments to methods, right? Because if we didn't pass Floozy to my method wouldn't know that Floozy existed, wouldn't have the value of 97.4 to work with. So we need to pass it, right? The way that I like to think about it is quarterback, wide receiver. So when we come down here to my method, even though we're calling the parameter Floozy, this is a whole different Floozy. It's a copy of Floozy. It's a different variable. It's a different memory location that we're also giving the name Floozy. So then when we set that variable equal to 13.1, it was equal to the value 97.4, but after we run this line, now it's equal to 13.1. But the thing to realize is that this new variable called Floozy in a different location is equal to 13.1. So then when we get to the end here and we come back up and we work our way down the main method and we print out Floozy, this Floozy is the main method's Floozy. It's this one right here, which is a different, is the original memory location that has the value 97.4. So that is what's printed out here, 97.4. All right. So then same thing with our S string, I believe. Is that right? No. Yeah, same thing with our S string. Okay, and so I guess to talk about the S string is an object, right? Like we should be doing string here, right? But the designers of Java thought, let's make it is an object in actuality, but let's program it to behave as a primitive data type, right? Like a double or a char or an int. And what does that mean? That means when we pass a string to a method, let's pass it in with as a temporary variable, right? And we call that pass by value, where the variable's memory location is not affected, but the value that is contained in that memory location is passed to the method. So that's how the string works. It is an object, but the compiler Java treats it as a primitive data type and passes it by value, just like the variable Floozy is a double, primitive data type is passed by value. The variable memory location isn't passed, but the value that it contains is passed. All right, so that's that. And then we get to our object. Our object of type myClass, right? It has a gravy property, and we set that gravy property. Obviously, the gravy property is public, which is bad programming practice, but it's good for what we're trying to do here, just to exemplify what's going on. So gravy is equal to 107.43. We set it to that. In the my method, in the myMethod call, we pass it the object. It receives the object in this variable an object, and we change gravy, right, to 10. So then when we come back up and we do our print lines, what does it print out? It prints out 10. So what is going on there? Well, an object is a collection of variables, right? Along with methods that we can use to change those or change the values of those instance variables. But you have to understand, all an object is a collection of variables. When we did Pong, our object was the rect, the position, the color, the size. It was a collection of variables that were used to represent a box on the screen, right? And that's what an object is here. It's just a collection of variables. And the object is a variable, right? It is a variable, just like a primitive data type variable. It contains a value. And so what the value does it contain? It contains the memory location where the collection of variables that this object represents are stored. So it contains the memory location. So when we come here to myMethod and we are sending the object variable, we're passing by value. All right, but it gets a little complicated because the value that this variable contains is a memory location. So when it comes here to myMethod, it creates this temporary variable, just happens to be called the same as, oh no, it's different, right? It's an object. So it creates this temporary variable of type myClass, which is any class, and the value that this variable contains is the memory location of the original object. So since this is the memory location of the original object, when we say memory location, access the gravy variable in that memory location, and we reset it, it's affecting the original object's instance variables. So it's a little bit complicated because some people refer to this process as pass by reference, where you're passing the reference, right? So you're passing, the reference would be a memory location. But in actuality, everything in Java is passed by value. So this variable is passing by value. The only thing is the value is a reference, is a memory location. So when we're over here, it's not like this an object all of a sudden is the object. It's a new temporary variable that contains the memory location that is stored in this variable, the object. And so what that means is you can kind of think of behaviorally, when you pass an object to a method, it's treated like a global variable, where when you affect the object here or you make any changes, those changes affect the original object that is stored in this memory location. So that might be complicated, but I think I kind of repeated myself enough times where I cleared it up. But if you still have trouble with that, talk to me and I could draw it out and clarify.